So, ReArm Europe, this plan is making headlines in Europe, with around $856 billion committed to helping Europe ramp up its military capabilities. Various articles have been published regarding this topic. So, let's discuss in simple terms what this ReArm plan is, and whether it will truly remove all of Europe's dependence on the US in the coming years. As you know, the USA is an entirely different country under Donald Trump's rule. They don't want war, they want to reduce their debt, and more importantly, they want to reshape their relations with Russia because it is in US national interest. Due to this, we have also recently witnessed an explosive White House meeting, in which Trump scolded Zelensky for not making peace with Putin and leading the world toward World War III. Recently, Trump also cut all the military support to Ukraine that the US had been providing, and this has had a negative effect on Ukraine, as it gives Russia an advantage in capturing more land in Ukraine. Looking at these developments and the US's complete U-turn policies regarding Russia, Europe has become more aware and understands one thing: anything can happen in the upcoming years. It has become clear that the US might not always be there for Europe in the way it used to be. With the Trump administration making aggressive moves against their allies, European leaders are realizing that relying on Washington isn't a guarantee anymore. And that's where the ReArm Europe plan comes in. Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the European Commission, just unveiled a huge plan to bolster Europe's defense industry. The ReArm Europe plan is a five-part strategy that could mobilize nearly €800 billion, which is roughly around $856 billion, to help Europe with more defense and attack capabilities. This new package is a plan to help European countries invest more in their defense systems. It will give them more freedom to spend money on military needs, and provide €150 billion in loans to help pay for these investments. The main aim of the ReArm Europe plan is to reduce Europe's reliance on the United States for military support and capabilities. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen emphasized that this is a key moment for Europe to take more responsibility and become stronger in defense. Here is a short clip, please watch.
Europe is ready to assume its responsibilities. ReArm Europe could mobilize close to €800 billion of defense expenditures for a safe and resilient Europe. We will of course continue working closely with our partners in NATO. This is a moment for Europe, and we are ready to step up.
Well, the plan isn't just about numbers, it's about Europe taking control of its own security. The EU's aim is to pool resources, make defense equipment purchases together, and massively strengthen the defense industry. It will focus on crucial areas like air defense systems, artillery, drones, and ammunition. The hope is that this will allow Europe to both defend itself and provide even more military support to Ukraine. Von der Leyen's proposal aims to give European countries the ability to increase their defense spending without breaking the EU's budget rule. This is important because it would let EU countries spend an additional 1.5% of their GDP on defense, potentially raising almost €650 billion over the next 4 years. Countries like France are already discussing how to boost defense spending, even if it means reducing money for welfare or other public services. As I mentioned in my previous video, Europe's top priority in the future will be military and defense, and they will not focus much on the welfare of the public. Now, let's talk about what this means for US-Europe relations. The US has traditionally been Europe's strongest ally. NATO, largely driven by the US, has been the cornerstone of European security for decades. But with tensions rising between the US and Europe, especially with Trump's unpredictable stance, Europe is starting to question whether it can keep relying on America. Europe fears that, if push comes to shove, the US might pull away, or simply not be there when Russia turns up the heat. Europe is now looking to defend itself more independently, with less reliance on the US. This could eventually lead to a more fragmented world order, where the US and Europe are no longer united on every front, and Europe might begin to forge its own alliances, with countries like the UK and France taking the lead. So, what does this mean for European people? Well, the mood is tense. There's a growing fear that Europe might have to face Russia on its own, and the situation is only getting more serious. The EU is essentially saying, we can't afford to be weak anymore. This could change the daily lives of Europeans in ways they might not expect. There could be a shift in priorities, more focus on military readiness, less emphasis on social spending, and possibly a more militarized society. People are starting to realize that defense might come at the cost of other things they hold dear. The European Investment Bank is even expected to loosen its lending rules to support the defense sector, which shows just how committed the EU is to this transition. Another critical point: European European leaders are now seriously considering the idea of nuclear sharing. Under this plan, France could share its nuclear weapons with other EU countries. This marks a big shift, as only the UK and France currently have nuclear capabilities in Europe. The fear of Russia is pushing Europe to take extreme measures, and this nuclear sharing initiative could reshape the entire security landscape in Europe. But to be honest, Europe's defense industry, for all its ambitious plan, still has a long way to go before it can rival the military might of the US. Yes, the ReArm Europe package is bold, but it's going to take years, if not decades, to build up the capabilities and infrastructure needed to make Europe fully independent of the US in terms of defense. This could make Europe even more divided. Countries like Germany, which are still hesitant to significantly increase military spending, might find themselves at odds with countries like France and the UK, which are more willing to take on the challenge. The situation is incredibly precarious. The US, Europe's traditional military backbone, is becoming a more unpredictable partner under Trump's leadership, and Europe is realizing that it must take its security into its own hand. The future of Europe could look vastly different, with more internal divisions, increasing military tension, and a realignment of alliances. If this plan works, Europe could have a stronger defense and be more capable of standing on its own, but at what cost to its unity and political stability? In the end, this shift could have lasting consequences for both Europe and the US. If Europe steps up its defense spending, and if the US pulls back, we could see a world where Europe, once under the US's protective umbrella, now takes the reins of its own destiny, potentially at the expense of its relationship with the US. The next few years are going to be crucial in determining what kind of world Europe and the US will inhabit. So, what do you think? Is Europe finally ready to step up and take control of its own defense? Or will this be the beginning of a more fractured world where the US and Europe no longer share the same vision for global security? Thanks for watching the video, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.